Welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to try something here with nature set number 12. It is... Alright, so let's get started on this. This is really a fun process right here. We just want some white pigment ink. My Hero Arts pad is getting super dry, so I tell you what, let's switch out to... I just happen to have some nice moist pigment ink on my Moonlight Duo pad here, which is a hybrid pad that comes with a company's white ink pad, pigment ink pad accompanies that set there. That's why they call it the Duo. Okay, now over here there's going to be that lighthouse, so I'm not going to put too much of this over in that area because I have some images to stamp out in that area, just like I do here, but this one's going to, the Seaside Cove's going to go along with this this horizon line here. So see, I'm creating a horizon line there. So there's our ocean. Okay? And just kind of leave this a little bit streaky. You know, this is one of those things. It doesn't have to be, you know, perfectly applied. Okay? Not by any means, which is usually the case with any of my techniques. Things do not need to be perfectly smoothly applied, okay? You want it kind of streakier, you know, you find those kind of striations in nature, especially when it comes to things like water, but it also happens in land too, okay? Okay, now see what I'm doing is I'm trying to avoid getting blobs, so you know I don't have too much ink. It's not a sloppy, juicy pad that I'm working with here in terms of the amount of ink on the pad surface. Got to be careful if you have like a brand new pigment ink pad. The Hero ink pads are a little bit spongier. This one's like a fabric one. This one's spongier, so if it's brand new or if you've just re-inked it, you might ink up with your cotton ball there, and it might just have just the slathering of white ink on there, which is a little bit harder to apply in a nice smooth fashion because it is just so wet. So you just kind of blot it off quite a bit. I'd recommend blotting off more than you think you're going to need to blot off. Get it to the right consistency, and then lightly apply. Get a feel for it. The drier it is, the more pressure you can put down and, you know, kind of streak it over like that. The wetter it is, if it's too wet, blot it off some more, and then apply. And then just kind of smooth it out. Use a light touch, okay? You want to kind of build up those tones like that so you get this nice transitioning line like that from the outside in, okay? See that? It's a little bit more, a little bit less, a lot less, okay? And you just kind of do that by streaking it along like that. Okay, so that being said, like I said, this is going to go right on that horizon line there, like that. If I don't get it right on the line, you know, that'll just be the way it goes, but I'm not worried about it. Okay, let's get to the clouds here. Let's see if I have a good tear on my paper towel like this. Okay, so the clouds, I'm going to add this kind of dynamic, I don't know, kind of diagonal within here. Diagonals kind of create a visual movement in your scenes. I don't always do it, but when I do it, it always occurs to me, hey, that looks, you know, pretty cool. Sometimes I forget to do it, but diagonals in composition, pretty fun to do. Okay, so, I don't know. Let me try my Hero Hues one right here. I might have to go back to the Moonlight Duo if this one's too dry. This is a very dry pad that I'm working in, okay? Okay, so see, I'm kind of on my paper towel. The cotton ball's like halfway on, halfway off, okay? And you can kind of just, you know, wipe it on there a little bit. Stay on your paper towel a lot, okay? You don't have to just go down here, okay? You want it halfway on, halfway off, just in general, like that. And then you get your little edge of your cloud like that, okay? You can switch up. You don't have to use your same masks or anything like that. You can kind of build it on and connect up like that if you want to, or however way you want to. Just rip your paper towels in kind of a shape that you like in terms of the edge or the top edge of how you want your cloud to look like. Okay, now usually I kind of make my top edge of the cloud a little bit lighter, so that means I'm applying more ink in that area, and then what I do is I kind of blend it out after that. All right, now I don't want these clouds to be too light because I do want this light beam to be coming out from the lighthouse. Okay, so I want this to be a little bit more subdued. I want the big beam on the lighthouse to be kind of the most prominent. Okay, so after we've done this, I did this video on how to do this, clouds, on a video yesterday. So what you do is you create those transitions now. After you get your line like that, transition this down a little bit now, okay, or a lot, and kind of fill in a little bit more. So you kind of go down to transition that line that you've established with the masking. And then you just kind of smooth it out a little bit more, and you can make it even, but as I said in the video, it looks kind of better if it's a little bit more irregular, where you have a little bit more ink in some areas than others. Okay. So it's kind of irregular. You have a little bit more ink, here, here. And it starts to look a little bit more billowy that way. If it's all a uniform consistency, it'll be the same value. And when you have that, things look a little bit flatter. Unless that's what you're going after, it's like a shadow puppet type of thing, things are really flat. Which has its own special charm to it. But on something like this, I tend to like it a little bit more varied. The more potential visual richness you have in something, the more varied it is, because you have kind of a wider range in any given kind of characteristic of a card, meaning light and dark, soft and sharp, dull and bright. You can even have warm and cool. I'm not going to have that really in this piece right here. Okay, now see, I'm going above the cloud here too to make them kind of glow and make them a little bit more kind of vapor-like. Okay, see that? It just kind of, it's very, I don't know, kind of organic that way. And as far as a technique goes, when you do something like this, it's really freeing, because you don't have to have anything really perfect. It looks better if it's a little bit more kind of jumbled. Maybe that's not the right word, but just varied, okay? Not even, okay? See this right here where I'm adding a little bit more white ink down there? See, it's kind of a little bit glowing a little bit more, right? So I don't have to do that over the whole thing, because we want that to contrast against, a darker area, so that looks lighter because that area is dark. If I put it over the whole thing, it might look okay too, but it doesn't have to, okay? So that really kind of takes us off the hook of having to do anything too exact, okay? All right, so that is that. I am wondering what this is going to look like if I add kind of a Milky Way across that, or something of that sort. If I'm going to be able to put that light beam across it. I might have to wait for this to dry a little bit. Okay, so let's take the Milky Way from here. This is set number 22, but like I said, all these stamps are available individually as well. One of the things I almost forgot to do, I think I'll add in some black in here too. Okay, not just white on dark, but we'll use some VersaFine black pigment ink as well. All right, so let's see here. Let's go ahead and use the black VersaFine on the Milky Way. That. Okay. And I think what I'm going to do before I stamp this, I think I'll kind of blot off the edge a little bit. See, like that? It's like a finger. I'm not trying to wipe off everything, but I'm just kind of blotting it off so that it stamps out a little bit lighter around on the perimeter. That way, when I do my additional impressions with this one, it'll just blend in, maybe, perhaps, a little bit more gracefully into the next stamp, because it kind of fades off on the edges. Fading off on the edges fades into the accompanying impressions or other stamps. All right, so that's what it looks like right there. A little bit of texture. And it looks quite a bit different than it does on a cardstock. I find it, I'm looking at this and I can tell the ink is kind of beaded a little bit on this surface right here. All right. Blot it off again. I would probably recommend re-inking in between impressions. You might be able to get 2 impressions out of it, but the second one might be a lot lighter than this one, so they wouldn't match up quite as much. But you can try it. I don't know. Can't hurt. And what I mean by, see, I think you might be able to get a couple impressions out of it because if the ink is kind of beaded on there, it means that not a lot of it transferred over, or a full amount didn't transfer over. I don't know. I'm looking at that right there. I don't think I would go for another impression of it. It might stand out too light. Okay. I need a mask here. It's easy masking out a horizon line like that. That's just nice and flat like that. Because I can just go like this. And I rock that one. Okay. That one I use so much more ink than the other one. I'll blend that in right there. When I was stamping that one out, it went like, and it double stamped, so I didn't get a good impression. That's a good thing, though, maybe. It's not a good thing for me, and then I'll have to blend it out, but it's good in terms of this lesson here. I'll show you how to blend everything in like that. See how that one really stands out like that? But on this paper, it should just blend in with the surrounding just fine. Like I said, this ink doesn't dry so fast on the Stardream. It does dry, though. It's not like using a gold foil or something of that sort. All right, so why don't I just use the same kind of rag that I was using before, paper towel. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of take this and I'll just kind of blend it in a little bit. Let's add a little bit more ink to it like that. Okay, so this is my applicator as well as my, masking material and whatnot. It's my ink ink application tool. Okay, so there we go, like that. Okay. And you're just kind of lightly kind of just blending things in. The inks, the pigment inks really, they flow on this paper really nicely. Like I said, it's sealed off. It looks pretty good on even matte paper too, but the more sealed off you get with a given type of paper, the more whatever inks you're using on them will kind of blend and glide around. I have a kind of a harsh edge down here, but we'll play around with that. Okay, so let's go with some of this black here into this area, into the white down here too, and we'll make it a little bit streakier too. Okay. Now, I have to be mindful that I am going to stamp some imagery over in this area. Like the main subject matter. Alright, so there we go there. Alright, let's do a little repair work on that cloud down there, where that black stamped into the cloud. Let's grab a mask again. Doesn't even have to be the same one, and just mask over. And let's go into our white pigment ink. Let me use a little bit of a juicier pad here, just to kind of expedite this process a little bit. Ooh, too juicy. Let's blot it off a little bit. Apply. Okay. I'm going to layer these clouds a little bit more too. See where this is my edge originally up here. See that right there? I'm going to come down here and add in some additional billows, okay? Sometimes it's good to kind of let your clouds set up a little bit. They're not completely dry down there. They're reasonably. I mean, this isn't like sopping wet where I'm going to go like this and it's going to wipe off or anything like that, but I suspect there's still a little bit damp. But see that kind of secondary cloud in there now? See that right there? Kind of looks a little bit, I don't know, kind of like a soft lump, you know? It's like lumpier. See that right there? Just a little bit right there, but look how much more dimension that gives, you know, to that area. Okay, so there's that kind of area out there that was a little bit harder. Let's put a little bit of a cloud into that. So coming up from there, I've been going down, right, and adding it into the cloud. But let's go up here and just blend out that blob, you know, of a double stamping of that dark, you know, super black ink in here. You know, when you're using those pigment inks, kind of in this fashion like this, it's almost like using, you know, like an oil pastel. These are oil inks, you know, after all. So when you go into it, and when you kind of move them around like this, even the white one right here, it's like using a white oil pastel on this cotton ball here. Um, and they're kind of fun that way, you know, to utilize that way. You can use it to make your highlights, you know, just by adding a little bit more ink. You know, in terms of kind of adjusting the value of that given ink, the intensity of it, you know. It's like crayons or anything like that. The more bright you want it, you know, you add more crayon down, or you can get a very light version of it too, where the white of the paper is showing through just by putting, you know, just a very light layer of it. Colored pencils, etc. It's the same thing that we're doing here with the inks as well. Okay, so anyways, see that right there? It's like that billowy thing. This area right here looks a little, I mean, I can still see that square there, but that's not too bad. Okay, so we have that foundation kind of established like so. All right, see what that angle is kind of doing in there? It's, yeah, it's a real fun angle to employ, you know, in terms of creating some visual movement within the piece. That white paint over that black ink over there doesn't look too bad. It looks like kind of like it's more kind of set out in the distance, I would think. All right, now here's my question here for me. It's like I'm kind of wondering whether or not not allowing this to really dry before I go for my impressions, will it stamp over this, you know, clean? We'll see. Okay. It might be a good idea to allow it to dry, but I'm not going to. I just like stamping, you know, it's just like, I don't know, as I mentioned to someone in a comment, you know, they said they were afraid, you know, of doing a certain type of technique. And I get it, you know, I was a student before and in college, and that's what kind of not seeing your things as so precious and kind of fearing to take the next step and whatnot is, you know, I can relate in terms of finished pieces, but you know, our teachers always kind of, they wanted us to be gutsy and to, you know, be bold and not kind of hold back. And I understood that later. But that's the thing. I mean, I don't know, in school we had grades to consider though, but you're not being graded, and just go for things. Sometimes the best lessons too, for me, are when I try something and it doesn't work out, because it kind of creates other opportunities to learn kind of workarounds or different techniques to, and by which to achieve something that you're going after. Or in this case, like, I had that big blotch there. I rocked my stamp like that. So I have to kind of, you know, add an additional cloud and I have to blend things in a little bit more. And sometimes you'll find kind of additional techniques and processes that way. Okay, so I'm holding this down because I really want a lot of that ink to transfer onto the card. That happens to be, kind of have a slathering of white, not dry ink on there still. Okay. All right, I got reasonably close. I was off about I don't know, probably a 16th of an inch or something like that. Eighth, maybe an eighth of an inch. But that's fine, okay? See that right there? So there's our Seaside Cove right on there. All right. Let's get our lighthouse in here. Lighthouses are just, they're a lot of fun to stamp out. I really like doing them at night. Kind of it sets the tone for kind of the entire purpose of a lighthouse, right? In terms of safety and kind of identification of location and whatnot. But they can represent different things in terms of cards. It could just be, a lot of people just like the visuals of the lighthouse. It's aesthetically interesting. It creates a landmark on the coast. They're often, the high points of a given, little landmass and whatnot. But they can also be really nice visual metaphors for things, safety and, I don't know, warnings too. Keeping you from harm. They make great things like graduation types of metaphors, in terms of finishing something and, you have your light going out into the great expanse or whatnot, a light leading, someone home, finding their way home, whatnot. It could be a metaphor, for, they make great sympathy cards too as well. You have a light beam coming out of there, very tranquil setting in some ways, but, something's in turbulent waters, it could be like a parent or something like that. Just in terms of guidance and whatnot. Okay. All right, so that was the lighthouse. This is rocks and waves right here. I'm just putting some kind of larger rock formations there in the foreground like that. Okay. Let's bring some of those rocks down here. Let's carry those rocks out a little bit. I'm just kind of using maybe the top quarter inch of them, and maybe I'll go at an angle too. So what you do is you kind of mimic or reiterate the angle of another, prominent formation within the scene like that. I can do it with these rocks like this. So it's just like a subtle thing. I mean, people could create some kind of relationships with that. These slopes right here, here, and they slope in the general direction of that. A lot of these things, I mean, in terms of things like visual harmonies and whatnot, you can kind of create all these different types of things like this within a piece. And it might not register kind of immediately or logically, consciously within the viewer, okay? But you as a creator like that, what you can do is you can kind of create these different types of subconscious types of references here and there when you're doing these types of things like slopes. You look for different things like that. So like, see this thing sloping down here. I could create another bank of clouds right in front of this lighthouse right here going down there like that. But I don't know. There's all kinds of little things like that, visual metaphors and whatnot that you kind of lay down within your pieces, and I think they all kind of they resonate with people, but it might not be just in kind of such an obvious way. It could be, like I said, it could be more subconscious or whatnot, and people might look at something they just like it. They don't know why. You know what I mean? But you create all those different opportunities like that, these little situations like that, and I don't know. They might like it even more, but you know, you might be hitting them on kind of a subconscious level. Not to get too deep here or anything like that, but okay. So you know how we blended in some different areas around here? Let's go in and blend it in a little bit more. Now that we've stamped out our imagery right here, let's see if we can kind of bring out some things here a little bit more so. Okay, so this, like say the rocks and waves stamp right here, okay? We have these splashing waves like that. This is what it would look like on a white piece of paper, but we're working in, you know, a very dark piece of paper right here, so those splashing waves don't really stand out as much. So I can make them stand out a little bit more by putting in a little bit of darker tone around them, okay? They're never going to look white. I mean, you know, I could add some splashing waves down here in a white ink or something like that. But they could stand out a little bit more just by the use of a darker tone, meaning black, okay? See it right there, where I've added that in like that. See, I mean, this makes this area look a little bit lighter by making that area next to it a little bit darker. Let's come into these areas now, too. I have that horizon line in there. I'm just going to bring a little bit more of this blending in here. It's like it feels like using charcoal or something like that, or an oil pastel when you're doing this. You can really kind of move it around nicely like that. Okay, I can put, you know, some of this onto my Seaside Cove right this. I'm just going along the horizon line like that. Okay, and that just creates a little bit of separation between the clouds and, you know, the horizon like that. See that right there? Now don't darken out the whole thing. Kind of leave it a little bit streakier. Remember what I was saying about kind of variation and not having to have everything completely even. Okay. Right. Okay. Let's add in a couple other things in here, but let's do that later. Let's add that at the end. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll start to try to bring out that light within the lighthouse with that beam running across here. And we'll take a look and see what that looks like. I really love these clouds. I love doing this kind of technique on the dark paper. And the Stardream works really great, but like I said, it looks good on matte papers as well. I think it might look a little bit better to me on the Stardream, though, just because it has that little extra, you know, that shimmer and that variation. I mean, it doesn't look blue, right? But when you do that, it really changes it, you know, depending on what look at that blue in the clouds like that. But when you look at it like that, you just don't see it at all. So it's like, I don't know, maybe it's almost like you're getting, you know, 2 or 3 different cards in one, or 2 or 3 versions of it. Okay, I'm just going into that lighthouse, and there's a couple windows on the lighthouse. You can see it right here. Okay. I'm lighting that up, and I'm going to light the, put a light in that lamp as well here. Okay. So, I think even that, just that alone looks kind of interesting. You know, but we'll do a beam coming out from that. Yeah, I do wish that that was, this whole thing was a touch drier. Or I wish it was dry. I'm tempted, you know, to hold off here. Okay, I tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I'm going to try to add this beam in here right now. But if I'm not getting the white that I want into this black because I'm picking up and blending the black into the white, then I'm going to allow it to dry a little bit. But if it's going along just fine, I'm just going to go for it here. Okay, so that's my mask here. So all right. I mean, you have your beam going up or down. You can have it flared out a little bit more. I think about like that. Okay. So that's where I am, right on that lighthouse portion, okay? See that right there? I'm going to start it from there. All right, let's go in with our, let's go in with the moon and the maker. I got some black on that from when I was doing that cloud earlier. Let's switch off to a slightly cleaner one. This is going to get pretty murky, I think. Okay, so, you know, if you watched my video yesterday, I talked about tapering, having something lighter and moving out from that light, and it becomes darker. So what I want is the light to be a little bit lighter over here and darker as it gets out this way. I still think I want it to show up out here, but what I'll do is I'll start applying ink in this area, and I'll add a few more taps in that general area. It's kind of interesting with this ink here. I can see it. I'm adding it, and then it gets much lighter because I'm applying that ink. And it's like, if I keep tapping it there, it's almost like I start removing the ink because it's going right back into the cotton ball. So it's like I'm wiping it off. So it has to do with kind of the pressure you're using and the amount of tapping you're doing and how wet your pad is. This is picking up some of the black here. I don't know if you can tell, but this is what, I don't know if you can see that beam kind of starting to happen right here. Okay. So don't try to get it all in one fell swoop, okay? Just kind of add layer upon layer. Okay, now I am definitely starting to pick up some of that black ink. Okay, let me get a little bit more white ink on here to combat that black removal, okay? Alright. Kind of keep it nice and smooth if you can. Use a lighter touch as you kind of move away from your lighthouse, okay? And see, it's some areas of the this beam here, we can imagine it's hitting some areas that are thicker in fog and moisture, so maybe it becomes a little bit lighter. So it doesn't have to be a uniform light beam, okay? You want it kind of a little bit more irregular, just like as if it was moving through moisture and fog and different densities of it. Okay. Okay, I'll show you where we are right now. See that right there? It's hard for me to pull off both because I'm just kind of hand holding this right now. I'm starting to get my pad a little bit kind of funky with black ink. These pads are kind of meant to, you know, get gooped up like that, and I'll show you how you just clean them off. Okay. I just switched off to another cleaner cotton ball. I might be doing this twice, okay? I might be doing it right now just for this video, but I think I might come back in after it dries so I can kind of apply a cleaner version of that. It's really kind of picking up a lot of that black ink. It's like this gray beam kind of running across there. But let's take a look and see what it looks like. I mean, it doesn't look too bad right now. It looks a little bit dim, okay, because see over here, it's hard for me to apply the white because it's picking up so much of that black ink, and the black ink is kind of mixing with it to form kind of a gray. And let me try to get a little bit more. I'll try to get a little bit more bolder with the amount of ink I'm using here, the amount of white ink. I'll try to use a really light touch too. It's interesting, when I go over that wet black ink too, I apply the white on top of it, it just almost disappears. It becomes kind of that, it looks white, but then it just suddenly kind of just fades out, you know, and becomes this gray. So, I don't know, it might take a lot of the buildup of it here. All right, a little bit lighter though, but I think you get the idea there, okay? What that beam can look like right in there. All right. I'm kind of debating on whether or not I want another texture in here. And I think I do. I think this would look really fun in here. Things are looking kind of a little bit, they definitely look kind of somber, which is kind of okay, you know? But I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to add in some stars into the sky. I think it would kind of animate the sky a little bit more. Okay, I'm trying to find a good mask that'll kind of mask off this clouded area here. All right, so we have the Milky Way texturing in there, but let's bring out some additional texture and brightness into it, okay? In the form of the bleed-proof white. Will it look too light? I don't know. So why don't I kind of use it somewhat conservatively and just go for a few little specks in there to begin with. And then if I like it and want more, then you can always add more. But if you're not sure, just use it accordingly. And that goes for anything. You know, when you're doing things like highlighting or whatnot, when you're doing color additions, if you just add a little bit of something, you can see if you like it or not. And if you like it, then add more. It's just like, you know, if you're not sure if you like a certain food, it doesn't mean you have to eat the whole plate of it. You know, you can always take a little bite and see if you like it or not. Okay. So, old toothbrush here, Dr. Martin's bleed-proof white. You can also do this with a paint pen or whatever. But Dr. Martin's certainly makes it easy to do. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just kind of flick some paint down like so. All right. Yeah, it looks pretty good, I think. It's a nice little texture in here. See that? So you have that against that Milky Way in the background. I need to spin it around so I can get it from this angle now. Okay. There's our stars down there. Let's play around with this now. It's down here in the splashing waves. I don't think you'd see that. I don't know. Might not see things so kind of bright like this, but let's kind of hit this area down here with a little bit of splashing wave light, like it's capturing some of that, you know, light. Maybe, I don't know, it might be coming from the stars or from the lighthouse, whatever. It doesn't have to be so logical, though. If it looks good, it doesn't matter where the light is coming from, okay? So it's like down there, and the crashing waves. All right, I think that kind of added to it from a textural standpoint and contrast standpoint. You have something very textured in there now with the contrast of light against dark. Look at that. See down here, too? I mean, I think that's really fun. Little splashing waves like that. All right, so that looks okay, I think. And I did mention that I want to add in some additional imagery. Here's this spooky branch right here. What I can do is I can add this, into some of this foreground area. And we'll just go ahead and use their versifying black. A nice dark black. You can use your versifying Clair or whatever. Dye-based ink isn't going to stick to this at all, so I wouldn't try that. I don't know, maybe a Memento would work. Or not Memento, but Memories black. Memories blacks, that ink can be like paint. Sometimes it's really thick. Okay, I added just one onto the side of the lighthouse. I'll add another one down here. It just kind of adds another element to the foreground, kind of pushes everything back one step, so you're adding another layer in the front. You can kind of make things a little bit more, I don't know, sealed in terms of the composition. It kind of frames things a little bit more. All right, so you have that kind of foreground like that. See that right there? Just it's that other little element. See that element right next to the? It's something a little bit craggy. By contrast, it looks quite a bit different than the lighthouse in terms of solid and kind of a little bit lacier. I don't know if I would characterize that, but in terms of it being something next to something like that. And plus, I think it looks good against that cloud. All right. Let me see. I might put the sailboat in here. I'm not sure. It's kind of like it's not really sailing. It's kind of more docked out there. I think I will go ahead and put it down there. Let me see. I have a smaller version too. That would look good in here. I'm not sure. I might leave it out. It would change kind of the spirit of it slightly if I were to use it. I think it would look okay, but I'm not sure if that's what I want in there. I do think I want to use some little seagulls. They wouldn't be out at night, but they just make, it's just kind of, it doesn't have to be literal, like I said, it's kind of more of like a, this metaphor here. You get seagulls, birds, yeah, this notion of freedom or whatnot. All right, so we have that. Look at the different characteristics. I love how these things look when you kind of tilt it down like that. It looks grayscale. You can't see any blue at all, but then, the nature of it, it becomes so light like that. But then at the angles like this, you can really see that blue in there. All right, now what I'm toying around with the idea of was a quote here. Okay, I've been using a lot of the same quotes because I've been doing a lot of like nighttime type of things just from stamping it on dark, papers like that. But oh, let's see. This one is pretty good. For my part, I know nothing with any certainty, but the sight of stars makes me dream. Vincent van Gogh. And that one's a little bit too big, I think, for in here. Although it would fit right up here. And I would do that in the Brilliance white, I think. All right, I'm just going to go for it. Like I said, I'm going to follow my own advice. In terms of just, if you're not certain of something, do it. I don't think I've used this one too much before. I used it, I don't know, I used it on something because it's all inked up. There's a lot of different scenic sentiment quotes out there. 107, was it? I can't remember. And I don't think I've used them all. All right, let's do a test print, okay? This is just my test print on my Stardream cloud tests here. Okay, there we go. I stamped it a little bit light on the top. Let me make sure my stamp is inked up sufficiently. Plenty of pressure, equal, even pressure, okay? I think that'll look pretty good. Let's see. I think it'll look good down here too, but I think that's that open area up top there is kind of the natural position for it. It's kind of on that kind of rule of thirds area too. I might need to balance it out a little bit though after I stamp the impression. I don't want this, I want it stamping out reasonably well in terms of, we want it to be legible, but I don't want it to be so dominant form up there. So if it stamps out a little bit lighter than white, that'll be fine. I just don't want it to stamp out, where it's, hard to read. The whole idea of text is, for it to be legible, right? Copy. Okay, I am stamping it over that black ink, so hopefully it does stamp out reasonably well. Okay, yeah, it's stamped out kind of light, so I think it looks pretty good up there. See, for my part, I know nothing with any certainty, but the sight of the stars makes me dream. Vincent van Gogh. And I do think this piece is reasonably dreamy looking. I have this other... This could almost be like a folded card like that. If I did that, I should have stamped it a little bit more, or I could kind of fold it like that, and then I have this other one that says dream right there. Another scenic sentiment, word stamp. But like I was saying, just from a visual standpoint, I was wondering if I'd want to it's kind of weighted over there a little bit more. But let's add a few little highlights in here. This is just my white paint pen, okay? And I'm just going to add a few little highlights on the tops of a couple of these stars, clouds like this. Okay. That, I don't know, it just kind of gives them a little bit of something to relate to the stars up here. But I tell you what, let's do something right here too. Let's add a few larger stars over here. Okay. Have I don't remember if I've used some little crystals on this paper yet, on the Stardream paper. All right, let me adjust my exposure of my camera here. Okay, that's a little bit closer to what I'm seeing here in person. Okay, so I'm not sure if I've used these little crystals on this Stardream paper yet, but let's try a few. Okay, let's see. Oh, good. My glue thing here is a little bit clogged, which is actually good because it's only allowing out a little tiny bit of glue at any given time, so it's perfect. I kind of have to unclog this glue thing every time I use it because it dries up, the glue dries up in here. These little glue spots don't stand out as much as they do on a gold paper, so I'm going to have to kind of tilt the card, I think, to find them, because they kind of glisten. I think if you had like a Stickles or something like that, you can even just do those glue little bits on here. You know, instead of adding a crystal, they would just be inherently shimmery. Okay, I was going to say, I'm going to keep this a little bit subtle, but I don't know, maybe I will add a slightly larger one on this side. I don't know, just to kind of visually balance the scene off. Like I said, everything's going on this side of the scene for the most part. All right, we're going to keep this upside down here because I just have better access to the things over here. I always tell people, you know, don't be afraid to, you know, spin your cards around in a direction that's the most conducive for the application of whatever media you're applying. You don't have to have things reading upright all the time. You know, you can get kind of, you know, spin it around if you need to get your bearings once in a while, but I'm not, you know, I do focus on the overall, but when I'm applying something, I'm concentrating on the area more so. All right, these are just some crystals I found on Amazon. Really inexpensive. I don't remember how many. It was like $2,500 for like $7 or something like that. And this is a gem, jewel picker or gem picker or something like that. It just has this little rubber tip on here. But look at these little glistening little, I don't know if you can see it here. I have to capture the light right. Let's go for really small ones. This is when I really need this. Oops, my gem picker picked up two of them. Jewel picker. And you have to get it. You gotta pick them up where you're picking up the correct side of it, not kind of upside down. These little gems are, I think they call them flat back crystals. Flat back crystal rhinestones. I don't know how it is. I'm picking them all up on the correct side for some reason. I usually pick up some and I'm getting them kind of upside down and whatnot. Some of these are so small I could barely see if I picked one up. All right, where's the glue there? There's the glue. Okay, I finally picked one up upside down. Okay, there we go. Okay, I think I got all my little glistening little bits of glue there. Let's see if I did it evenly. I think so. All right, let's see if you can see these crystals, if I can kind of get it at the right angle. Okay, yeah, see them right there? You see 1, 2, 3, 4. Right there, there's a couple right here. See that? Yeah, there. Oh, there you go. It's like they twinkle a little bit. It's like you can't even see them in some ways, so they're kind of subtle, but then, when you turn, see them right there? When you turn the card, you get this little flashing, reflective type of thing. I think it'd be kind of interesting. You can even put it down there in the water to represent specular light. It's that light reflecting off of the, whatever lighting is in there. So let's do a couple little dots in the water down here. It's really kind of it's really dark down here, so adding these little dots down here really stand out. So I'm not going to add too many of them, but just having a few of them down there, it becomes kind of decorative too in terms of little pattern. But it just says that that's water is kind of being a little bit reflective. I don't want to do too much down here because it's already getting kind of busy up top here. But let's take a look at this one. Look at that sky up there. I think adding the little crystals up there were just the nice little kind of finishing touch on here. I'm kind of happy with this beam. You can see where it kind of mixed with the black. It kind of formed like a warm brownish tan in there in some ways, but I think it looks okay. But that quote right here, in terms of, it's saying stars, and just to add in these little extra little twinkly little, bits in there, kind of, I don't know, it animates the quote a little bit more. All right, so anyways, see that bank of clouds like that? Having it at a diagonal like that. I mean, let's say there was clouds just down here too, right along the horizon, going off in a straight line. I think that would look good too, but I don't know. It just changes the spirit slightly, at an angle like that. Creating these triangles like this too, when it comes to compositions. Sometimes the triangles are nice. You've heard this thing, kind of grouping things in odd numbers, so you kind of create these threes here too, and it kind of reiterates this whole idea of the, the lighthouse is kind of a triangle too. It's like a pyramid right here, So there's all kinds of repeated forms in here. You can say this light here is almost like a triangle as well. So it's just a repeated form. I wasn't thinking about that when I was doing all this. You don't have to go into it saying, okay, I'm going to create this kind of triadic type of compositional theme going in here. I wasn't thinking of this at all, but, if you do start seeing patterns here and there, what you can do is you can kind of add a few more of these things, accordingly or whatnot. But it's not something that has to be preconceived, I'm just kind of pointing it out afterwards when I notice it. Okay, so anyways, see this right here with the clouds, the irregular kind of application of ink. There's a lot more up on top of the top, edge of the clouds where I'm masking it off. And then as it, moves away from that mask, there's less ink. So that's where you get that transitioning type of application. They're very kind of dry applications of ink, maybe a little bit heavier at top, but you just kind of blend it down that way where it transitions. More ink up top, less ink down below, and then kind of do that thing where you put some of that ink above them, and you create this, kind of glowing sensation as well. If you're doing this on this paper, just be mindful of, that this ink is somewhat sealed off. But like on something like this, I don't want to touch some of those black impressions that I just did, but, if you touch it like this, I don't have like a lot of ink coming off on my finger, okay? This is from earlier, okay, but it is setting up already, and like these white clouds right here, it's not like putting it on the gold foil, okay? The Stardream takes it a little bit better. Different Stardream's a little bit different, okay? Like this gold one from here, that impression of my Lakeside Cove just it barely stamped out, but I have a feeling that's because this one's more metallic, okay? There's that metal component in there in terms of that Stardream, but this Stardream right here, it's more of this iridescent one, okay? It's just, I don't know, it's just a different chemistry to it. So when you're doing it, just be mindful about your process, okay? If you stamp out your images first, are you going to be able to go over it with, whatever, in this case it's pigment ink, without it kind of blending in. But there was just no other way to do it. I wasn't going to kind of stamp this light beam in here, or, put that light beam in there. And then I wasn't going to go with this Milky Way stamp and stamp it right up to that line. It would look just kind of awkward. So I had to put that Milky Way stamp in the background kind of to establish that. The Milky Way, I think, looks pretty good in there. It just kind of establishes this other little bit of texture. You don't have to use it, though. It could just be an open sky or something like that, and I think that would look good as well. In fact, that's how I have always done it in the past. This way, I just did it like this for the first time, but it gives it a little bit extra kind of textural depth, don't you think? You can see even the stars in there, and how this Milky Way looks, okay, in there. I mean, you can barely make out the forms, but you can see the textural range of it in here. I don't know, so that was something interesting for me to see. Plus, I wanted to see how the black, how something like these more bolder, dark images with these little tiny bits of things in the negative space stand out like these little stars and whatnot. And the answer is, they stand out okay, but I've put a beam over the top of it, and I've added extra layering of textures, so it doesn't stand out as much. But it's just kind of buried in there, but very visible anyway. All right, so that's, what I'm thinking about in something like this. This is just kind of a experiment right here and test of a couple extra little things in here and whatnot in terms of, I don't know, the moisture kind of characteristics of the given inks and how we can layer them in there. So it's all fun stuff. It's all kind of based around the same, similar ideas, but a little bit of a different type of kind of approach with each one, depending on kind of the types of things that you're going to be employing in terms of techniques and whatnot in your process. And, you might not even know the exact process going into it, but you just kind of figure it out along the way. And I think I figured out some things with this one too. And I don't have to keep them in mind. I didn't learn everything, definitively, but I don't know, I hardly ever do with anything, even if I've really developed a certain technique a lot. Anyways, bottom line, play around with things and, test things out and kind of, I don't know, step into the unknown once in a while and play around with things. Look at your different combinations of media. I don't know, has anyone tried oxides on, Stardream papers and things like that? I don't even have any of those pads, but I know a lot of you do, but things like that would be kind of interesting to test out. But you can get some kind of fun results and, have kind of a fun time in the process as well, just kind of experimenting around. Some things work, some things don't, some things work, and then some things work even better, depending on slight tweaks in the techniques, and sometimes with practice or whatnot. Alright, so anyways, if you like this video, hope you might hit the like button. If you have any suggestions or comments, please add them to the comment section. Yeah, this one was a lot of fun. If you've made it this far in the video, thanks so much for joining me.